few months ago, I put out my review of Monster Hunter Wilds, and I stand by everything I said in that game, which you should all go check out after this, by the way. But long story short, while I personally do enjoy the game, and I'll admit I haven't been playing it very much lately for reasons we're going to get into, there is definitely some issues with this game that are holding it back greatly. That has also led to the game dropping by a whopping 98% of its Steam player count. And that's what we're going to be discussing today. So with all that said, let's go ahead and jump into what's going on with Monster Hunter Wilds. So during a time period, it seemed that this game had been very successful. Monster Hunter Wilds broke world records when it launched. And this game was everywhere where you looked, on Twitch, on Kick, or whatever. Streamers were really getting on the hunts. Fan art was all over Reddit and Twitter. But only a few months afterward, the wave of enthusiasm has just disappeared. So the game now lies with a very small fraction of this once gigantic player base, a mind-boggling 98% decline, which means we have to ask the question, what happened? So how did one of the most talked about games in 2025 just screw up so big? In order to comprehend this incredibly fast fall of Monster Hunter Wilds, it is necessary to discuss 5 of its main pillars, which are technical performance, content pace, gameplay design philosophy, communication, and legacy. So let's start with technical performance. Regardless of the ambition of a game, it has to work, plain and simple. And Monster Hunter Wilds, well, it failed to do that. Capcom released the game at the same time on PC and console. Disaster quickly fell upon the PC version. There were incredible frame drops, memory leaks, broken ultra-wide support, texture streaming problems, and strange CPU bottlenecks on high-end systems. Not only was the game buggy, but it was almost unplayable to a lot of users. In fact, for a lot of people, they were saying that the beta, which was also pretty scuffed itself, ran better than the full game. This caused the reviews of the game on Steam to fall off a cliff. Forums on the community were filled with complaints of poor performance, list of bugs, and petitions for refunds. There was clear optimization problems, and Digital Foundry highlighted them, further denting the consumer confidence. In this current hyper-competitive gaming environment, performance does not come as an extra, it's also just become stock standard. When you fail the PC player base, you don't just kill like a niche group or anything, you lose influencers, you lose modders. You're going to start to get some pretty bad reviews, and you've also lost the pulse of your community. The endgame of a Monster Hunter game is extremely important. It's the loop that makes the players grind, build, and test out new builds, and pursue the excitement of the next grand hunt. In Wilds, though, when the credits played, there's a lot of players discovered after that was, well, not a whole lot. There's some good returning monsters and a small number of high-level quests and some layered armor choices, but nothing that came close to the intriguing systems of World in Tempered Monsters or Iceborne or something like that. Granted, this can change in the future, but we have to talk about what's going on right now. The excitement of unique loot was even masked by weak weapon design and armor that lacked any excitement. Thank God for mods. With nothing worthy of grinding or following community event type content, there was no use to stay. It was good to go on hunts, sure, and what's worse is they eventually came to an end. Look, as of this recording, we have not received the Title 2 update yet. Maybe that can alter the course that they're currently on, but, well, we'll just say to be determined as of right now. Monster Hunter Wilds aim to have an easier approach. It's not necessarily bad per se, making mechanics more fluid, adding better tutorials, and cutting the onboarding friction is probably healthy if you want a larger player base. However, in a turn somewhere along the way, Capcom has exercised the soul of what makes Monster Hunter so good. There was no longer punishing early fights. The preparation stage of preparing meals, dealing with goods, learning behavioral patterns of monsters was just gone. Instead, they were replaced with cutscenes, easy gear paths, and AI companions that are actually surprisingly competent. The long-term fans of this franchise have been marginalized. It also appeared designed to cater to people that were brand new to this franchise, saving very little consideration for those who had clocked in hundreds or even thousands of hours to mastering the old games of the series. Capcom made the core loop flat in pacing and deepening. Fighting continued to be fun, though it was less serious, less surprises, and less impressive skill levels. The barrier of entry was significantly lowered. And then of course there's the whole Sacred, which you just literally press one button on your controller and it tracks the monster and goes right to it. There is the focus system as well, which look, I do enjoy the focus system, but it does make the game a lot easier. And that's one of the bigger problems with Monster Hunter Wilds. It's become too easy, which is not good for this series. This franchise deserves and is supposed to have some pretty difficult fights. Since the release of this game, they've added a couple hunts that were a step up in difficulty, but we're yet to have that great big challenge, which is what this whole player base is craving at the moment. And hey, look, a rough start can be overlooked by players once major mistakes are admitted, and the company is clear about what's going on and what will be happening in future, as long as this is done in a proper and timely fashion, which Capcom did not do. Instead, what happened was Capcom remained elusive when people were questioning what's going on forums and on Twitter and other social media outlets. There was no ETA or promises of patches. By the time Title 1 update was released, it looked like it was too little too late. The absence of communication formed a vicious cycle. Frustrations which led to apathy. People have lost interest in this game. The ones who remained a little longer became a bit more skeptical, and those who fought to come back found no strong motivation to do so. And those that thought about coming back to the game ended up finding very little motivation to do so. Unfortunately, Monster Hunter Wilds, as of right now, has become one of those games where you'll log in when they add new content, you'll grind the new content, and then that's it. You're done. You'll come back on the next update. You have nothing to continuously look forward to with playing this game on a consistent basis. Look, Monster Hunter World was an absolute behemoth. It was not only a great game, but it changed the franchise perception to a global audience. It had depth, skeptical, evolution, and live content which changed over time. Wilds, in turn, seems to be a step back for many players, whether that be because the previous game, which is Monster Hunter World, had more content, had less bugs, and more importantly, had a better endgame, and also ran a whole lot better. Yeah, that's why the comparisons are being made. We've now reached the stage where Monster Hunter World has completely surpassed Monster Hunter Wilds in terms of active players over on Steam. Now, we should throw in the caveat there that this does include Iceborne. Keep that in mind as well. So I guess the question now is, can Monster Hunter Wilds be saved? Look, I don't think it's too late for Monster Hunter Wilds to change its course. Its fate is not set. We've seen other redemption stories that have lessons to offer. No Man's Sky, for example. I know a lot of people will say Cyberpunk 2077, which I personally won't, but hey, it is there. Final Fantasy XIV, A Realm Reborn, all reverse their image through openness, content, and humility. Capcom needs to introduce a giant patch to resolve the PC optimization, provide meaningful and repeatable endgame systems. Probably going to have to be quite a bit of rebalancing as well. Publish some developer roadmaps that go directly to the community. At this moment in time, Monster Hunter Wilds has a sense of a game that has lost its body trying to find the target for mass market. Capcom will not be able to rely on the content alone to bring players back. They will also be required to demonstrate respect to this Monster Hunter community, which has developed this franchise into what it is. Monster Hunter Wilds was supposed to be the next great hunt, but unfortunately that's not how things panned out. Capcom oversimplified, and in the process of pursuing accessibility, they lost an essential audience when they don't pay attention to performance. And when you're failing to communicate, you will also lose your community. It's an ideal combination of arrogance and failure to deliver with a lack of expectations. However, this is not total hopelessness. It's not too late for them to redeem themselves as long as Capcom listens, acts, and finds the magic touch responsible in turning the Monster Hunter into the iconic franchise it has become. In the meantime, however, the hunt is no longer there, the monster roar is silent, and the fire has burnt out.